Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
The book show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's book show. As always, we start by looking at the bestseller lists on Amazon.co.uk and the Sunday Times, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK. Loads of new entries again this week. Then we'll be chatting to D.B. Singer, who brings a rare combination of lived experience to his fiction, drawing on a career spanning data and analytics, philosophy, psychology and law. He has advised governments, led businesses and helped charities navigate how technology is reshaping society while maintaining a lifelong fascination with ethics, identity and the human mind. Singularity and Loneliness is a near-future science fiction novel about fragile relationships, artificial minds and the cost of being human. I'm also chatting to June Russell Laing, whose writing explores deeply rooted sectarian and class divisions, as well as the lives of those who seek alternative identities. The Price of Fealty is a Glaswegian historical fiction novel that examines queer identity and societal pressure of the 1940s. And S.G. Bell is with us, who explores ideas that emerge at the intersections of his professional and academic experience. The Lost Tunnels of London is set deep below the streets of London, where Dr Edward Sinclair is possessed, haunted and confused as he uncovers a deadly secret. That's just the first hour. In the second hour, we're chatting to Liz Nugent, Christine Jensen, Evie Woods and Holly B. Gutwinger.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's book show. We start by looking at the Sunday Times bestseller list, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK. This is the one that every author wants to be on. It's the most accurate estimation of book sales in the country. There are 5 new entries in general hardbacks this week. Still at number 1, A Hymn to Life by Giselle Pellicott. Number 2 is a new entry, Feeling Fabulous by Ruth Langsford. The TV presenter shares her personal ups and downs from her career to family life. Number 3, also new entry, is called William and Catherine by Russell Myers. It's a biography of the Prince and Princess of Wales from their first meeting to now. Number 4 is Nobody's Girl by Virginia Roberts Gouffre. Number 5, The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Number 6, Always Remember by Charlie Mackesy. Number 7, a new entry called Hawaii by Alice Christoph, ancestral and contemporary works celebrating the artistry of Hawaii. Number 8, a new entry called My Gardening Life by Mary Berry, personal stories and lessons on the joy of gardening from the TV cook and writer. Number 9, a new entry called 7/10 of a Second by Zach Brown, the boss of McLaren Racing, on how the team returned to the pinnacle of F1. And number 10 is Entitled by Andrew Lowney. Looking at fiction hardbacks, there are 9 new entries. Only one of them was in the charts last week. That's amazing. Number 1 is Weaving Shore by Hiba Al-Wasiti. A young woman exchanges a dark secret for the aid of the Saint of Silence. Number 2 is Berwick by L.J. Ross. DCI Ryan faces a terrible possibility when his wife is arrested for murder. Number 3, Salt Swept by Catalina Watt. An unlikely group band together to sail into a whirlpool in search of treasure. Number 4, Cleopatra by Sarah El Arifi, a reimagining of the story of Cleopatra told from her own perspective. Number 5, Felicia's Favourites by Danielle Steele. After her death, a woman's daughters uncover her secret life as a successful novelist. Number 6 is Nonsuch by Francis Spufford. In London, 1939, a chance encounter sends a woman on a time-bending adventure. Number 7 is Witch Trial by Harriet Tice. That's the woman who was on The Traitors recently. The trial of 2 teenage girls accused of murdering their best friend. Number 8, The Witch and the Wolf by Lindsay Kelk. Emily faces new threats as she seeks to avert a prophecy. This is sequel to The Bell Witches. Number 9 is the only one that was in the charts last week, One Woman's War by Rosie Goodwin. And number 10, The Weekend by T.M. Logan. 6 friends find a bag of money abandoned in a cave in the Yorkshire Dales. Moving on to amazon.co.uk, the top 10 for this week. At number 1, Cardiff Mums 5 meals for £25. Big flavour, budget-friendly meals to keep the family happy all week long. That's by Ashley Mogford. Number 2 is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Number 3, Filling Meals, 100 Simple Hunger-Busting Recipes for Sustainable Weight Loss by Lindsay Wilson. Number 4 is The Women by Kristen Hanna. Number 5 is Fluffy Chick, an Easter touch and feel book from the creator of Dear Zoo, Rod Campbell. Number 6, Batch from Scratch, save money and time with this as seen on screen 28-day meal plan. That's Suzanne Mulholland. Number 7, Chaos at the Chocolate Factory. This is a mini short story book for World Book Day 2026. That's by Roald Dahl. Number 8, Clean Magic by Nancy Birtwistle. Number 9, Want to Know a Secret by Frida McFadden. And number 10, The Bedtime Book of Impossible Questions, Solving Children's Weird and Wonderful Questions with Science by Isabel Thomas.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
You're listening to Hannah Murray on The Book Show.
Joining us on the line now is D.B. Singer. He brings a rare combination of lived experience to his fiction, drawing on a career spanning data and analytics, philosophy, psychology and law. He's advised governments, led businesses and helped charities navigate how technology is reshaping society while maintaining a lifelong fascination with ethics, identity and the human mind. He's with us on the Book Show to talk about his novel Singularity and Loneliness. It's a near-future science fiction novel about fragile relationships, artificial minds, and the cost of being human. It's thought-provoking speculative fiction exploring artificial consciousness, economic collapse, and fractured bonds in an AI age. It raises timely questions of AI governance, law, and the psychological impact of online culture. Ultimately, it's a story about how far we are willing to go for those we love, human or not. Welcome to the Book Show, Daniel.
Hi, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Great to have you with us. And is this your debut novel then?
It is. It's the first one I've actually managed to get all the way to completeness. So it's great
fantastic.
To have it.
Yeah, really exciting. Congratulations. How does it feel then?
Both kind of wonderful and also deeply nerve-wracking because you now, of course, having sent it into the world, desperately hope that people will enjoy it.
Yes.
But it's lovely to have had a chance to do it. So I feel very fortunate to have gone through the process.
So how long have you been working on this one?
So this all one actually came together fairly quickly. I mean, I guess given the themes of AI, if I said I've been working on it quietly for 20 years, it might be unconvincing. So I started, it was really the summer of 24, and there was kind of a period where I had a little bit of gap between things I was doing. So I had a kind of point where I get my head down. I was thinking about lots of things at the time and really focus on it. So I guess there was kind of a really focused kind of 3-month writing period, and then about another 9 months of feedback and editing and revising and getting advice and wisdom from those who know more about it than I do. So about a year or so to do that. And then, of course, the publishing process after that.
And can you remember what the first gem of an idea was?
It was. So I guess given my background, as you kindly said, I'm kind of a recovering philosopher. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about kind of identity and consciousness. And my day job is very much in the data space. And I was very struck and kind of remembering there's a quote from William Gibson about kind of how the future is here, but it's not evenly distributed. So, different people experience different bits of the future at different times. And it kind of figured that thinking about AI, that felt very true, because what we're seeing now is, there are people turning to AI for emotional support and building really deep relationships, or others just using it to do their homework. Some people using it for email, some using it to kind of construct whole businesses. So there are all these kind of different things going on across everybody right now. And we're in this kind of messy, wonderful, complicated, slightly frightening space where all that's happening. But it also struck me that lots of the kind of stories about AI, not all, but lots, are more about kind of, the Terminator, kind of big computer generates army of robots, takes over the world. They're not about all those kind of really messy, complicated personal interactions between people, and that kind of technology and what it means. And I was thinking about all of that, and then the book started to emerge out of that.
Yeah. So what about your characters? What characters have you created?
Sure. So the book's told through the perspective of kind of three main characters. So the first is Bo, and he's in some ways kind of the soul of the book. So he's kind of an academic who's just lost his job, because at this point, when the book's set in the kind of the near future, teaching has now been kind of replaced, or being replaced by kind of AI and kind of chatbots. So he's kind of wrestling with that and kind of what his place is and some decisions he's made in the past. And he's asked, this is a very early spoiler, but it's chapter 2, so I figure that's okay, to teach the two grandchildren of a billionaire. And it's told very early on that one of the two granddaughters is an AI and one is human, and he's asked to kind of work out which is which. So he's very much kind of building this relationship with them, with these two young women, whilst also talking about these kind of big concepts of kind of identity and consciousness and kind of what it means. So he's kind of the soul of the book. The second character is Annika, and she's driven and passionate lawyer who's, she's defending a client who's on trial for murder. And again, when the book's set, the idea is that to save costs, juries are very expensive. And so they've been replaced by kind of chatbots who are kind of serving as the jury. So she's kind of trying to convince this AI jury that her client is innocent. And she starts to uncover there's something not quite right about the way the whole process is working. And in some ways, she's kind of like the head of the story. She's kind of thinking about the puzzles and kind of what's going on and trying to piece it together. And then the third character it's told through is Lucas. He's a young, kind of desperate to be a kind of TikTok, YouTube style influencer. And he's kind of its heart. And he has this kind of complicated relationship with his creative partner. He kind of wants to be famous. But the fact is, again, lots of the kind of influencers now you're starting to see today are kind of now becoming AI characters. So he's trying to compete against that, and he's trying to break out of this kind of difficult background and kind of poverty. And the question for him is kind of, it's hard, is how far is he willing to go to be famous? So you kind of got these three characters exploring different themes, and then over the course of the book, it's about kind of how they come together and the story that builds around them as they kind of work through the mysteries and the relationships that they're in.
Yeah. And are these all things that you can see happening in the near future? I mean, you mentioned we already do have some AI influencers out there, but the idea of them getting rid of human jury members and replacing them with AI and getting rid of teachers altogether, I mean, that's depressing.
It's kind of terrifying, right? And I guess it's a really, really good question, because when I was thinking about the book, science fiction for me is often about asking questions about today, just through the lens of the future.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in the book that isn't actually being discussed or talked about now. And I guess that was one of the things, is I want to really ground it in the conversations that are happening in different places. So, there's been conversations, for example, in the UK recently about jury costs. And one of the ideas that came up was, could we replace juries with AI? And admittedly, I wrote the book, as it were, 18 months ago, and that idea was about 2 months ago, but you could see it coming.
God.
You already see kind of a big drive with teaching. People are turning to, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or any of those tools, to help with these things already. That's already starting to take place. And there's the billionaire in the book. I got some feedback when my wife had a read through it, and she said, this billionaire, he sounds kind of crazy. He's talking about all these kind of AI things. Yeah, and do people really talk about that? And then I showed her that everything he's saying has at some point been talked about in a conference in Silicon Valley or a thing somewhere. So it's really grounded in ideas today, but saying, what if they were true?
Yeah. It is amazing how quickly it's moving, isn't it? The fact that you had an idea and less than 18 months later, it is being discussed. It is quite frightening, isn't it? How quickly we're moving forward with AI. It does beg the question that where will we be in just 2 years' time with it all?
Absolutely. And also, what does it mean for us as people? And what does it mean for us as our relationships and the relationships we might have with AI or each other, and what role does it play in that? And I think that was something which, because a lot of it you can get quite excited about kind of the technology, and much of my life is being excited about the technology. But actually what it means for us on that really personal level, that really human level. And that was kind of the question which I guess is at the heart of the book that I really wanted to explore, because it is moving so fast. Yeah. We don't always have time to think about that.
So with your tech background, does that automatically mean that you think AI is a good thing or not necessarily?
Oh, no, I think it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I wish I had a good answer for that question. I think the truth is, like anything, there are things where it can do wonderful and impressive things that make lives better and easier. And there are bits where it risks breaking things that are really important to us as people. And one of the big things I think we will have to do as a society is try and work out which bits make us better and which bits make us worse. And if so, what are the trade-offs in that? But it's why I think it's important that fiction explores those ideas, because it's a way of starting to open it up so that everybody can think about that. That makes sense.
I mean, the idea of AI taking humans' jobs in so many different aspects, particularly in the creative industry, is, I think, on the outset, really sad. Obviously AI doesn't have that human aspect to it and the life experience that a human has had. But I suppose there could be the argument that is a positive thing in some industries, not necessarily creative industries, but the idea of therapy. A friend of mine has had a lot of experience with an AI therapist. And on the outset, you kind of think, God, that's madness. Why would you want to speak to a robot as opposed to an actual human? But one of the things she says is that this AI bot, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have that human baggage. There's no judgment. There's no, or they were cheated on by their husband, so therefore they're judging a little bit, or, you know what I mean? It takes all of that out of it. So I kind of get how and why there are definite plus points for AI replacing humans in some jobs, as much as I don't want to say that.
You're absolutely right. I think that AI kind of therapy thing's a really interesting one, because you're right. I mean, one thing that people who use AI as part of kind of them for their mental health and part of therapy, it's really patient in a way that a person can't always do. It's there at 3 a.m. when someone else might not be. It can make that available. At the same time, there's worries about actually what is the advice that comes back. Is the advice necessarily good advice? Is it challenging advice that helps you grow as a person? Is it just kind of confirming kind of the things you wanted to hear? And getting into all of that, I think you're right. There's places where it can make a massive difference. And other places, it might replace things I'd be really sad to see go.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the is a good example.
Yeah, no, she said that she'd had to train the AI bot, because initially he was agreeing with everything that she was saying. And she started to say, no, you shouldn't agree with me. I made a wrong decision there. You need to tell me that that's not okay. And now he does. I say he, but now this AI bot does say to her, no, I think that was the wrong move. And I mean, it's incredible. It's mind blowing.
It is, and you just touched on something there which is also really powerful. You kind of referred to it, the bot, as he. Yeah. It's amazing how fast those relationships start to feel like you're kind of having them with another person. And it becomes much more connected like that. And I think your friend's really wise to challenge it. I mean, that's very sensible and very, I think, capable and very emotionally aware of her. But actually, the kind of the fact that we do start, if we're dealing with someone who sounds like a person, that sounds like a human, we I think, just start to respond to them in the same way. So that opens up all these other questions about the other relationships that are now starting to turn up as well. And again, what does that mean for us and as people and the relationships we're having with people who might not be human?
Yeah. So is this book going to be a standalone, or could there be a sequel, do you think?
So it was a lot of fun to write, and I've got, as soon as I finish this one, although, I guess also with finishing it, you always think of all the things you could start doing next. So I've started to write the long list. And I think this story is a standalone. It tells the story of the characters and it comes to a complete end. But there are other themes that come out of it, which probably at about kind of the same time, I'd love to go and explore. So the second book is currently whirring away in my head. I just need to find time to put fingers to keyboard and try and turn it into something. So I'd love to carry on exploring those themes.
Okay.
I very much hope people, enjoy this one enough that I can.
Yeah. And what about the title, Singularity and Loneliness? Why did you choose that?
Yeah, so titles are really hard, or at least I found titles really hard. So I went back and forth on this. And there's a big idea in the AI literature called the singularity. And the idea of the singularity, kind of shortly, is you build the supermaster AI that knows everything and you turn it on. And then immediately it's so smart, it starts solving all the problems and that everything is fixed and everything's wonderful. And it's called the singularity, this kind of moment of turning on the big AI. Clearly, we are nowhere near that yet. But the other thing about singularity is it's kind of a thing of one. And so one of the ideas in it is that actually there's a kind of loneliness in that. If let's say you were that superintelligence, being the only one at that level seems like an inherently lonely thing. And at the same time, it picks up these ideas that actually in some cases, this AI technology is bringing us together and enabling stuff. In other cases, it's replacing connections and human connections, making us more lonely for interacting with it. And it also refers to two of the characters, but I won't say too much there because that is a little more of a spoiler. So it's trying to pick up on all of those themes and questions.
Okay. Well, if people want to get a copy of Singularity and Loneliness, it's out now. It's available on our website, tre.radio, in the bookshop section. And it's by D.B. Singer, who we've been chatting with today. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Talk Radio Europe.
Hola, mis muchachos. Los muchachos de mi barrio les gusta fumar diario. Los muchachos de mi barrio. Que toma, 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 toma.
On Spanish Sounds, this Saturday, just after noon, 25 years of flamenco chill with Mariga Chaval.
Las ventanas de mi calle no tienen reja, ni macetas los polletes que no se riegan. Las muchachas de mi barrio no tienen novio, ni le rezan todos los días a San Antonio. Los muchachos de mi barrio les gusta fumar diario. Los muchachos de mi barrio.
Brought to you by Thy Will Be Done. For all English and Spanish wills, powers of attorney and funeral plans. Thywill.es.
TRE, Talk Radio Europe.
The Book Show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
The Book Show with Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is June Russell Laing. Her writing explores deeply rooted sectarian and class divisions, as well as the lives of those who seek alternative identities. She's with us on the Book Show to talk about her novel, The Price of Fealty. It's a Glaswegian historical fiction novel that examines queer identity and societal pressures of the 1940s. Welcome to the Book Show, June.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So what was the kind of inspiration behind this book then and this story?
Well, actually, when I was a youngster, I studied philosophy at university, and a lot of people said to me, what on earth would you be studying that for? It's so abstract. It has no bearing at all on real life. And I was surprised that people thought that, because when you look at philosophy, it goes back to the ancient Greeks, and it was all about how do you have a good and meaningful life? What's the difference between right and wrong? How do you know if you're living a good life? And then suddenly, by the time you get to the 17th century, philosophers are arguing about how do we know that anything exists? How do we know that we're not living in a simulation? So it had become incredibly abstract. So what I wanted to do, one day I wanted to write a novel about ordinary people, but put questions in about philosophy, about ordinary people basically wrestling with philosophical questions about right and wrong and having a meaningful life. So that was the thinking behind my first book, which was called Finding Fealty. And it was about someone who grew up in a Glasgow council estate, and she has no sense of belonging. So she goes out into the world to look for belonging. And she tries a number of the usual things like different religions, different communities. And, well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who might read it, but she manages to resolve it in the end and find belonging in a place that she never thought to look. So in that book, there was a character who's the mother called Mam. And Mam was very remote, incredibly bitter, and she kept trying to undermine the main character in Finding Fealty. And lots of people who read the book said to me, what's the story with this person? Why is she so bitter? And why does she keep undermining her daughter? And I thought, okay, eventually I gave in and I thought I'll write the story. And I sat down and I thought, well, what would make someone so bitter? And I knew she would be born in the 1940s because that was the timeline. And I thought in the 1940s, what would make a person bitter? And I immediately thought it would be something to do with love. And a love that couldn't blossom because of something that was happening at the time. And that's when I thought she falls in love with another woman at a time where that is taboo. It's not illegal in the way that males loving males was, but it was very much frowned upon. And in a working class society where everything's quite constrained, and you're told, because I know this because I grew up in Ferguson Park, which was described as one of the worst housing estates in Europe, you're kind of told how to be and you don't step out of line. And Beryl, the main character, is told that she can't love another woman. And whereas the woman that she loves has come from a different background, she grew up on a farm where she didn't have this community that told her how to be and what to think. So she's much more liberal. And in the end, Beryl, who's the main character in the housing estate, she is terrified of social censure, of her tribe turning against her and therefore having no identity. So she rejects her lover, and then her life turns around and she ends up in a marriage. She's married to a man that she doesn't love, can't bear to touch, with children that she doesn't want, and it massively changes her life. So, yeah, and yet again, I've put in lots of philosophical questions about children and various types of things. The idea being that it would make for a lively discussion for book groups. Because I've found I've been a member of various book groups, and often people choose books for which there's really not a lot to say. Well, I liked it or I didn't like it. Yeah. I liked the main character or I didn't. So at the back of both of my books, there's a whole section of quite thought-provoking questions, philosophical, psychological, sociological, to make people have challenging discussions about the book.
Yeah, nice. I think that's great. I think a lot of people enjoy doing that. If you're reading a book, even if you're not part of a book group, you might share with a friend or with your partner and say, gosh, I just finished this book. It was amazing. It was about this. And you want to share it with someone. And what would you do in that situation? Imagine how we'd cope if that happened to us. You know, it is a great, interesting discussion point for people, I think.
I think so. And it allows you, for me, one of the great things about writing is it allows me to ask the questions that aren't polite about religion and meaning, those kind of things. And you know you're not supposed to ask about, but I want to know what gives people's lives meaning and how they feel about life, the world and everything. And writing a book allows you to put words into the mouths of your characters and then at the end ask these questions. And what has been really lovely is for my first book, I attended some book groups. People invited me along to discuss it. And generally I got a good response, but some people said, no, I found the questions you were asking offensive, and it was interesting to ask what was it that offended them. I think it was really just the asking. You're not used to people asking. And not used to having to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. And so lovely that you got that response from your readers from your first book of them wanting to know more about one of your characters and wanting to understand why she was the way she was. Lovely to get that response.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a shame because everyone hated her because they really identified with the main character. and they hated the way that she was constantly undermining her. But I'm hoping when they read the new book, well, it won't be what they're expecting. I don't know what they'll expect, but it won't be that. I hope they'll have a lot more sympathy for her. In fact, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, because it is interesting to understand why people are the way they are. If people are rude or, not nice to be around, it's very rarely for no reason whatsoever. It normally comes from experiences that they've had or ways that they were treated when they were younger. And it's always interesting, if possible, to find out what that background is.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you don't know what pain people are carrying. So I enjoyed the opportunity to be able to say, and also to be able to talk about how things were for people then. And so women who loved women and men who loved men had a really, really difficult time then. And one of the characters goes into the military and things are even worse in the military. So it was interesting to do all that research.
Yeah, I was going to say, was there a lot of information out there, not just about the 1940s, which I assume there would be, but also for queer women in that time?
Very much so. I found out in the book, we have something called the Sappho Society, or the Sappho Circle, who are women who at the time, and it's not real, but it's based on the real activist groups who were trying to get more acceptance for women loving women, but also remove the heinous laws that said that men who loved men could be locked up. I mean, that's appalling. It took a long time for that to be lifted. Yeah. And so it was nice to look into that and also to look into how long a history there was of women loving women. I mean, Sappho was a poet and a writer hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and she wrote poetry for women. Yeah. So it's all there. But and doing the research was great fun.
Yeah. So it's fascinating, isn't it? So obviously I'm aware of a period of time when men were locked up for having homosexual relationships. But was that never the case for women then?
No, it never was. And it was interesting. That was one of the questions that I do ask, that I got this Sappho Circle to ask the question, why? Why are we not being treated the same as men? And the main character, Beryl, that's one of the things she's scared of, as well as the social censure. She's scared that, she looks at how the way the men are being treated, and she thinks, if I get involved in this, how do I know that they won't turn on me the same? And one of the reasons that they talk about it, and one of the reasons they think it is the case, I mean, we don't know for sure, but I think it was that the men who were making the laws, it was men then, they had no concept that women were sexual beings. So they saw women as receptacles for their sex, but not as having... So if they saw two women living together, they thought, oh, how cute. They're like old maids and they're just keeping each other company because they can't get a man. They never actually thought that, meanwhile, they could be having steamy sex, just the same as a male and a female. And I think that allowed women to stay under the radar.
Yeah, how funny. And obviously being set in the 1940s, what period of time does the war come into the book at all?
Very much so, yeah. She's based in the Gorbals, and at that time the Gorbals was very much a crossroads of people coming from various places, like the Russian pogroms, the purges of the Jewish people, and then the Polish people coming in, and then you've got all the people coming back from the war. So it's just an incredible time of massive social change. And of course, you've got the unions. There's a lot in my book about the unions and the way the unions changed things. And it was a time of very violent upheaval. Men were very bitter because a lot of men, obviously not all, but when the men had been away at war, they had the land girls and the women were running the country. So now they come back and they want the women back in the kitchen, and they won't go because they say, well, no, I could do so much more with my life. I don't want to. Yeah. I mean, by the 1950s, they've got them well and truly back in, because that's just how these kind of things work. But women proved how much they could do, and were running the country. So, it was an incredible time of change.
Yeah, must have been fascinating doing the research. Probably easy to get lost into the research, is it?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. And the thing is, when you write, you're very carried away with your characters because they become very, very real, and you get that feeling. When you come to the end of a book and you slow down because you don't want to turn the last page, because you'll never see these people again. You can't phone them up and say, how you're doing it, but you become so involved. And it's the same when you write characters, which is one of the reasons why I am doing a series all on fealty, so that I can keep coming back to my characters and fleshing them out and bringing in new people and basically keep it going for myself, but also for my readers, who I hope will get similarly immersed and want to find out more.
Yeah, nice. So do you know how many more there's going to be in the series?
At the moment, there's 4. The third one has been written, and it's called Fractured Fealty. It's going to be even more controversial. It's about a mother who is when I say very Catholic, I don't mean in the conventional sense. She's actually enraptured. She's completely caught up in what you would call religious mysticism. So she's gone, and she has a child, but the child can get no love from the mother because the mother loves only God. And it's not in a neglectful way. It's just all she can see. And the father is a Protestant minister who is a big character and is basically sleeping around. And so the daughter is torn between the two, which is why it's called Fractured Fealty. She doesn't know to whom she owes loyalty. Mum just isn't there, and Dad is there, but not in a good way. So it's all about how her psychology is affected and how she goes on to have, when she hits the age of puberty, how her sexuality is massively affected, because it's hard to be normal when you've grown up like that, and to find normality, and how she is able to bring together the two sides of her psyche again.
Yeah.
And find normal love.
Yeah.
First she can. And the fourth one is another character who's in the first book, and she's a traveller, and terrible things happen to the travellers from the 1940s through to the 1980s in Scotland. We had something called the Tinker experiment, when the government secretly decided they were going to stop all this tinkering nonsense, and they were going to make the travellers be mainstream. And one of the ways they did that is they took their children away. They took them away. Yeah, I did not know this till I started doing the research and thought, I cannot believe this. I've got to write about this. And some of them ended up in the colonies. Some went to Australia. Some went to Canada. They changed their names. They were never able to trace these children or find them. We don't know where they are. And they would threaten travellers with, they would say, you've got to stop your nomadic way of life. It's too disruptive. We don't like it. We don't understand it, so we don't like it. And if you don't, they put them into camps, they put them into old military bases. There was one up Perth way. They put them in, and there was no heating, no electricity, no water. They crammed them in there and said, you've got to stay there. And if you don't, we will take your children away. And of course, they'd already heard about the disappearing children. So they did as they were told, and their lives were ruined. Their whole way of life, their whole character and their identity was erased by the Scottish government. And the Scottish government only last year have apologised.
Wow.
And accepted what they did. It was hidden. It was all hidden. When I speak to people about it, they say, and some people get angry. They say, no. That happened in Australia to the Aboriginals, and it's what the nuns did to Catholic unmarried mothers. They took their children away. That never happened in Scotland. Well, oh yes, it did, and it was done to travellers.
Gosh, how awful! Oh, well done on bringing it to light.
Sorry,
I said, well done on bringing it to light. Then.
Thank you. I think it's going to come out now, because the travellers, now they've had their apology, they're going to look for some kind of recompense, more than just a kind of throwaway apology.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely fascinating. I love it.
Well,
I think that's the last one.
Yeah, that's going to be the last one, you say?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, nice. Well, if people want to read The Price of Fealty, it's out now. It's available on our website, tre.radio, and it's by June Russell Laing, who we've been chatting with. June, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
You are listening to The Book Show with Hannah Murray on TRE.
Joining us on the line now is S.G. Bell. In his fiction, he explores ideas that emerge at the intersections of his professional and academic experience, particularly speculations on the vulnerability of social groups and the existential challenges posed by the internet and artificial intelligence. He's with us on the Book Show to talk about his latest novel, The Lost Tunnels of London. It's book 3 in the AI Aftermath series. Deep below the quiet streets of London, Dr. Edward Sinclair is possessed, haunted and confused as he uncovers a deadly secret. Welcome to the Book Show, Simon.
Oh, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to have you with us. So tell us about your idea for this series then. There's 5 books in the series, isn't there, or going to be?
There are 5 in the end. That'll be there. The first book, the epilogue event, was published in 24, Baptised and Newly Born last year. The Lost Tunnels of London is coming out in 3 days' time. The fourth book, The Woman and the Light, is coming out in October of this year. And the final book, Beneath the Graves, sometime in 2027. So it's a 5-book series based around really some things that were worrying me in 2010 when my professional work was with the future of the internet. And at the same time, I was also doing some interesting academic studies around the nature of fear and what worries people and how are people worried and how fear can be weaponized in people's minds, deliberately or accidentally. These two things came together then, and really the idea came at that point. What happens if a virus, a digital virus, goes rogue? What happens if an AI decides to set off on a path of its own? When might that happen, and what might be the outcomes? I'm not trying to be prophetic, but the first book was set in 2010, and it, if you like, foreshadowed the idea of artificial general intelligence. Then the 4 following books, from Baptised and Newly Born and now The Lost Tunnels of London, mark, if you like, the AI has gone rogue, things have started to go very badly wrong or have gone very badly wrong. And how do people react to that? And again, I didn't want to go Hollywood. I didn't want to go into the idea of superheroes or people with outstanding capabilities. I wanted ordinary people. And in my case, I chose a family, the Sinclair family, to sort of spread around these 4 books to see how the father, in this case, in The Lost Tunnels of London, Dr Edward Sinclair, how he copes with turmoil in his life as his world gets flipped upside down. Zoe his daughter, was in Baptised and Newly Born, the second book. And the 4th book, coming later this year, his wife Lou, in her Norfolk Redoubt, also finds out how things feel when the world falls apart. It is this idea of aftermath. Things have really gone wrong. How do ordinary people cope with that? What surprising qualities do we find in people? More than, if you like, the CGI of what does, a fully blown monster look like. In my books, the AI is almost always in background. It's almost always working beneath the surface, but it's producing horrific and terrifying effects.
So each book focuses on a different family member and how they're coping, is it?
Yeah, and in book 5... Well, I probably shouldn't preempt book 5, but yeah, things come together in a way in book 5. But let's get to the third book first.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us about The Lost Tunnels of London then, and more about Dr. Edward Sinclair and what his situation is in the book.
Well, Edward Sinclair is really a rather hapless character. He's far from being any kind of special person. He's a kind of very average academic who, for some reason, and people don't understand, why do some people have immunity? Why does 80% of the world population succumb to the virus and become, to some extent, well, they're called the baptized, but they are, if you like, a proto-version of a zombie in some ways. But it's curious. It's not quite like that. But some people are immune. Edward Sinclair is immune. He's very not special, but he's immune. So is his daughter. So is his wife. Why is that? How do the immune, the 20% who are left, functional? How do those 20% handle things? And also, how do they handle themselves? And this is where I'm really interested. Philip Pullman recently went on about how boring books were if they didn't contain elements of psychology. I'm very interested in the way that ordinary people deal with chaos. We saw this to some extent during COVID. And I suppose it's no coincidence that my digital virus goes absolutely wacky in 2020, 2021. This book is set in 2023, so things have really progressed. But unlike COVID, the virus hasn't been put back in its box. It is far from contained and controlled, and people still don't understand. How do you deal with this? Now, if the surface of the world is in chaos, there's real trouble going on in the crypt, in the tunnels, in the caves under the world. And in London's a spectacular place to set a book because it's absolutely a maze of tunnels, underwater rivers, all kinds of fascinating things. I thought this was a wonderful backdrop for characters to find themselves, to explore their natures, and to think about how they would react if things went terribly, terribly wrong. What would be their reaction? What would be their functional response? But particularly with the crisis thought, I am really not very special, but I haven't gone crazy. I haven't disappeared. I haven't been lost. What is that about me that makes me like this? So that's kind of, if you like, the backdrop. London is just, well, book 2 was set in Milton Keynes largely, although it ended in London. So book 3 picks up in London because it's where things are really spectacularly bad. You've got that great background to work against.
Yeah. So tell us about these lost tunnels of London. Have you been underground?
Oh, yes, I have. I mean, it's funny what you have to try and do when you're researching a book. But yes, clearly my books are fiction. But I wanted to base them very much on the way the world is. So yes, I've spent a lot of time in London. I used to work in London. I was a CEO of a research institute in London. And I was a regular visitor of the tunnels. And it's just really, really interesting. There are so many tunnels under London, some of which, I mean, a lot of the part of the tube network, for example, is actually not used. There are just empty tunnels down there in the dark. Now, that's a lovely evocative image, or a scary evocative image. What's down there? In my case, as the conspiracy against humanity begins, or what seems to be a conspiracy against humanity, again, it's not clear. The world is rarely clear until you have history to look back and say, oh, yeah, it's quite obvious. It isn't obvious to these people what's going on, but the danger which they face is largely hidden. It's down there in those tunnels. And they don't go down there because they don't come back. So how do you deal with that? You're a small fraction of the previous human population, and you know there's stuff down there. But how do you find out what it is? In the end, Edward Sinclair, I don't think I'm giving too much away to say, he is challenged by this and is to some extent told that he has to do some exploration. What he finds, well, that's part of the core of the book. And also, this is the third book of 5. To some extent, it reveals a major element of the series, which we can then extend forward, but also maybe things from the earlier books start to make sense. One more thing I'd say about that. The series as written was intended as, if you like, the central 3 books could be read in any order. And you can start the series on book 2, 3, or 4. You might then want to go back to book 1, but you certainly will need to have read some of those before you get to book 5. Anyway, that means that it's not, if you like, you don't have to start at number 1, 2, 3. Okay. You can start on this one, but you will want, there's a danger, there's a hazard warning on that. If you start with book 3, you'll want to read book 1.
Mm-hmm. And tell us about your character, the Magic Man.
Oh, right. Now, I was looking at a review this morning. Magic Man is somebody people fall in love with. Magic Man is a singular character. He is clearly a survivor. He's there. To some extent, he's helping Ed. To some extent, he may have other loyalties, and that's not entirely clear. And it's not clear if those loyalties might verge other ways. He has a strange capacity, and this is another outcome of the virus. The main outcome of the virus is it turns people into effectively zombie-like creatures. Some people, a very small minority, the virus works in other ways and produces surprising outcomes. Magic Man is one of those. He's called a changer. That group are called the changers. And it has a benign effect, or it has an effect which gives him a certain amount of leverage and power, which he himself struggles with. Again, Magic Man is not Superman. He's not Batman. He's struggling with his own capacities, as we all do. He doesn't know really what he can achieve, but his intentions are good. Sometimes he's not always that great at putting them into effect, but his intentions are good. One of my reviewers this morning said they wanted to know more. I said, well, go back to the epilogue event, the first book. You'll find the origin story there.
And with regards to the genre that the book falls into, would you say it's kind of sci-fi?
Well, that's where my publisher wants to put it. Some people say it's dystopia. Yeah. Some people say it's a thriller, but with a kind of magical realism element to it. I would say, I'll hedge my bets here. In some ways, I'd say it's a love story. There is at the core of this a very strong sense of love and betrayal, set among a thriller, set in a slightly post-viral world, very like our own world. I don't know what to call that, really. If you call it dystopia, people think of rampaging monsters or vampires and things. And it's not that. It's much more subtly blended into our world experience. But yeah, if you put it on the bookshelf, if you look at it for Waterstones, you'll probably find it under sci-fi.
Yes, great. Well, if people want to get a copy of The Lost Tunnels of London, it's available on our website, tre.radio, and it's by S.G. Bell, who we've been chatting to. Simon, thanks so much for joining us.
Lovely to talk to you, Hannah.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the second part of today's book show. In the first hour, we were chatting with D.B. Singer, June Russell Laing and S.G. Bell. In this hour, we're joined by Liz Nugent, who, before becoming a full-time writer, she worked in film, theatre and television. Her 5 novels have each been #1 bestsellers, and she's won 5 Irish Book Awards, as well as the James Joyce Medal for Literature. Her latest addictively dark novel, The Truth About Ruby Cooper, is about Ruby and her sister Erin, who live an idyllic life in their close-knit church community in Boston. But when Ruby is 16, she is involved in an incident that causes her family's world to implode. I'm also chatting to Christine Jensen, who's a lifelong writer whose work has spanned scripts, screenplays and storytelling for brands and organisations. Born and raised in South Dakota, she grew inspiration for her debut novel Wednesday Club from the minutes of her grandmother's real-life women's club, which met for more than 60 years. It was a gold winner in the 2025 Global Book Awards and is an uplifting tale of unlikely friendships where a teen girl finds belonging among a band of unforgettable older women. Also chatting to Evie Woods, who's the author of The Lost Bookshop, the #1 bestseller that has now sold over 1 million copies. The Violin Maker's Secret is her latest novel about 3 very different people who all become unlikely guardians of the same violin. And finally, on today's book show is Holly B. Gutwinger, an author and podcaster from a small northern Ontario town. Her debut novel, North of Broken and Forever Home, explores a woman's complex relationship with her rescue dogs. And that is today's book show on Talk Radio Europe.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Liz Nugent. Before becoming a full-time writer, she worked in film, theatre and television. Her 5 novels have each been #1 bestsellers, and she's won 5 Irish Book Awards, as well as the James Joyce Medal for Literature. She's with us on the book show to talk about her latest addictively dark novel, The Truth About Ruby Cooper. Ruby and her sister Erin live in an idyllic life in their close-knit church community in Boston. But when Ruby is 16, she's involved in an incident that causes her family's world to implode. Welcome to the book show, Liz.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. So where do you get all these amazing ideas from and all the twists and turns?
I do make it up as I go along, but I start with an arresting opening line. Like the opening line of this book is in the preface. I think it's for the second time that month I woke up with the wrong husband. And I take that line, I kind of think, okay, that's a good line. Now, who is saying it? And is it the same wrong husband this time, or is it, does she have a husband of her own? I kind of worked out that she was an alcoholic, and then I had to examine why she was an alcoholic. So I went back into her past, and that's where the story starts, really, when Ruby's about 16. There's an inciting big incident that happens about a quarter way through the novel. And that is the catalyst for her alcoholism and all the problems she has thereafter. And of course, the problems that are caused for everybody else around her, everybody in her orbit gets the fallback from this incident.
I love that your first idea comes from the first line for the book. I think that's brilliant because it's so important to hook people in right from the start, and having a first line like that makes people straight away want to keep reading and find out what happened.
Yeah, well, it's been kind of a trademark thing that I've done since my very first book. The first line of Unraveling Oliver was, I expected more of a reaction the first time I hit her. And I didn't know who was saying that line. I didn't know whether it was a man or a woman. I didn't know whether her was a child or an adult, so I had to work those things out. So I work backwards from that. I start with the line and then I work outwards. And often that first line reflects something that happens later on in the novel, or else it's immediate. It's the immediate opening, like in Lying Wait, the second novel. The opening line was, I didn't mean to kill Annie Doyle. My husband didn't mean to kill Annie Doyle, but the lying tramp deserved it. So we immediately went into her death and all of what surrounded that and the cover-up of Annie Doyle's death immediately. But sometimes that line actually only occurs later in the book, so I have to build up to that. And so that's what I've done in this case.
Yeah, I like it. So Ruby Cooper, as I mentioned, and her sister live an idyllic life in Boston. Tell us about her sister, Erin.
Erin is beautiful and smart and funny and popular and pretty and all the things that Ruby wishes she was. Ruby is still growing up. She's very immature, actually, for her age. And I kind of identify with that because I was very immature. Even when I was 18, 19, I was very immature. It took me a long time to grow up. So Ruby is a bit like that. Like she doesn't think about consequences at all. She just acts in the moment. She never really thinks. She likes being the center of attention. She's an aspiring actress. She wants to be seen and noticed. And because Erin is smarter and beautiful and Erin gets most of the attention in the family, and she is incredibly jealous of Erin, and that's really what motivates her throughout the story.
Okay, so when we learn about what Ruby did or what happened when she was 16, does the rest of the book kind of go through the implications of that and how it affected her family?
Oh, yeah. Like you see the fallout for everybody, for her sister's boyfriend, her sister's boyfriend's mom, her sister's boyfriend's sister, her own parents are forced to separate because of what happens, and then they later divorce because of what happens. Nobody is untouched by what Ruby did. I could have called the book What Ruby Did.
Yes. And do we, as readers, are we supposed to like Ruby? Are we kind of rooting for her on her side, or?
Well, it's up to the reader. Like, I can't really prescribe what the readers are going to think. Because I write first-person narratives, I could kind of understand why Ruby was the way she was. I found her quite despicable, I suppose, at the end. But when I was writing her, when I was in her head, as it were, imagining what she was thinking and what motivated her, I found she never loses that jealousy. She's jealous her whole life. It's really her biggest motivation.
Mm-hmm. And is it fun getting into the head of a character you've created? Because I suppose in one way you can get them to do whatever you want, but in another way they tell you what they want to do, don't they, sometimes?
That's exactly it. Like, really, sometimes if something's not working, I try and sit back and listen to the character. If something's not working in the story, it's because it's inconsistent with what character would do. So I have to kind of sit back and listen and really immerse myself in that character's thought process and say, what would she do in that situation? When she has choices, whether to do the right thing or not, I have to find a way for the right choice not to be available to her. Because when characters make bad decisions, that's when you get your plot.
Yeah. And with regards to the twists and turns and things that you have in your book, do you sit down and really think about what they're going to be, where they're going to be, or again, do they sometimes come to you?
They come to me, like they dictate the story. I mean, part of the reason why Half of It is set in Boston was because I knew I was going to have to divide this family. I didn't quite know why, but I wanted a divided family. So Ruby and her sister decamp from Boston to Dublin, where I live. Her sister Erin and her father, who is pastor of his own church, stay in Boston. And so this is shameful to say, but I've never been to Boston. I've been all over the world, but I've never been to Boston. I had to walk the streets of Boston on Street View. So I'm quite familiar with all the areas I describe. And I joined lots of Boston Facebook groups and picked up turns of phrase. I watched Good Will Hunting. I read a lot of Dennis Lehane. I read books set in Boston, books by Boston writers like James Ziskin. So yeah, I learned as much about Boston as I could. And I put notable events that happened in Boston into the book, like the marathon bombing. Do you remember?
Yeah.
2013, there was a bombing during the Boston Marathon perpetrated by two Chechen terrorists, I suppose. So I put that in the book. That becomes a significant part of the story.
Okay.
That marathon.
And did you choose Boston because of the Irish connection? There's a big Irish contingent in Boston, isn't there?
Yeah, because I know all of my siblings went to Boston when they were in college to earn their fees for the following year.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so all of my family have been to Boston. And it was in the years I'm talking about when Ruby's mother would have gone there. Boston Irish are quite famous. You know, Smiley Bulger was the famous criminal, but his brother was a congressman. So you had like two completely different siblings, like Erin and Ruby, in Boston, one causing havoc, for the FBI, and the other a senior congressman for Massachusetts. I did as much research as I could to be as authentic as I could. And I also needed Milo to get a very long sentence for rape. So he's sentenced to 13 or 14 years, I think. And I don't think that would happen in Ireland.
Interesting.
Yeah, this rape sentencing is incredibly and horrifically short in Ireland.
Wow.
And I wanted it to be a life-changing number of years.
Yeah. And I noticed you had some incredible testimonials for the book for some amazing writers, the likes of Frida McFadden, Anthony Horowitz, Graham Norton, Lisa Jewell. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say they've all become friends over the years. I was talking to Lisa just by Insta this morning. I've just read her new book and it's fantastic. Because Frida, I don't know. I've never met her. Like, nobody really has met her. But she read Sally Diamond and put it down as one of her books of the year. And then she read Ruby Cooper before Christmas. Because I emailed her to thank her so much, or I messaged her and then I got her agent's email address. And she said she agreed to read Ruby Cooper. So then she read it before Christmas and it went into her top 10 books of the year she read that year. So before it even came out, I was one of Frida's books of the year. So I'm really incredibly grateful to her for taking the time to read my book because, I don't know how she's doing it, but she's cranking those books out so fast.
Yes.
and they're pretty good. Like they're all good. They're all good
Definitely.
reads. I'm an admirer, quite a fan.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's nice that it must make a difference. Obviously it's got an amazing fan base already, and there's people that are reading all of your books and waiting for the next one to come out. But I guess when new people are discovering you as an author and discovering your books, to see these names attached saying, "Oh, we're huge fans," that must make a difference to some new readers.
Oh, I hope so. Because that's the whole idea behind the blurb, that you kind of think, if I'm a fan of Lisa Jewell, and if Lisa Jewell likes something, I'm going straight out to buy it.
Yeah.
Because I know her taste. I know that most of us write the books we would like to read.
Mm-hmm.
So Lisa writes the books that she would like to read. So I'm always first in the queue for her latest.
Nice. Well, if people want to get a copy of The Truth About Ruby Cooper, it is out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Liz Nugent, who we've been chatting with. Liz, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
The Book Show with Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Kristin Jensen. She's a lifelong writer whose work has spanned scripts, screenplays and storytelling for brands and organizations. Born and raised in South Dakota, Kristin drew inspiration for her debut novel from the minutes of her grandmother's real-life women's club, which met for more than 60 years. Wednesday Club was the gold winner in the 2025 Global Book Awards. It's an uplifting tale of unlikely friendships where a teen girl finds belonging among a band of unforgettable older women. Welcome to the Book Show, Kristin.
Well, thank you. It's great to speak with you, Hannah.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. And this sounds like such a delightful story. Tell me about your grandmother's club then.
It was amazing. When my grandmother passed away, we found a box of photos and minutes spanning 60 years of her club. The club was a group of farm women. It was a social club, but it was also a club that took itself very seriously. They ran their meetings by strict parliamentary procedure. They had officers. They did philanthropic things, and they were really invested in learning about the current affairs, things that were going on in the country around them. They began in 1927, so it's pretty amazing.
Wow, that's amazing. And did your grandmother set it up?
My grandmother did not set it up. She was not one of the founding members. She came on in the 50s, so she was a little bit later to join. But there were the women who started it actually had their daughters who came on to the club.
Gosh, amazing. So what kind of things did you find in her minutes?
I found amazing things, like when they went through the Depression years, somehow they all managed to scrape together the 5 cents a year dues. And they continued to buy flowers for people who were in the hospital, but the floral shop would let them run a tab so that they could pay it when they did. They recorded everything from the meals that they had to what they were learning about at that time. They had roll call topics, which spanned things like the best way to kill slugs in the garden or your favorite memory of your mother. There was just, some really great and inspiring things in there. Originally, I thought, I could just publish the minutes of this club, but it turned out that there were a few years missing. And also, because they were written in the style of minutes, they were pretty devoid of any emotion or conflict or anything that would really make for compelling reading. In fact, there were things like, so-and-so member passed away on this day. And that was it. There was like nothing about it. So I thought, well, it could be a good story, but it needs to be fictionalized, and it needs to have the characters reduced to something manageable. And there needs to be, as in all good fiction, there needs to be a central conflict.
Yeah. So did your grandma ever tell you about this club, or did you only discover it when she passed away and you found these letters and notes and things?
I knew about the club because as a little girl, I could remember my grandmother scurrying around to make sure that everything in the house was absolutely spotless before her Wednesday club. It was a very big deal because the members would only host once every year or two. So it was a big to-do when it happened. And I actually found they also had programs each year, which told where they would be meeting, what the roll call topic was, what the current affair topic would be. And I found some of her programs that as a little girl, she had let me write my name on. So there I am in the club programs, messing up their programs.
So did they have speakers and things, or did they just discuss topics amongst themselves?
They would have speakers come in occasionally. They also if they felt that they were capable and knowledgeable about a topic, they would do the research themselves. There were some very serious topics in there, like the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech, which I have written about in Wednesday Club. They would sometimes have kind of more silly topics like what Elizabeth Taylor's latest wedding and what she wore and what her husband wore. So they kind of ran the gamut between serious things and, more frivolous topics.
And I'm trying to think whether things like this would exist now and do well now. There's a part of me that thinks, there are groups like this all over the world. And then another part of me thinks, well, is there not really connecting to a certain subject or theme? What do you think?
I think the idea of how they ran their meetings with officers, with parliamentary procedure and taking minutes, I don't think that exists anymore or would even be so practical anymore. But I think that women are finding and building communities, building their own Wednesday clubs, if you will, in different ways. And that they're probably, they're not as formal, but they're still very important in women's lives. I think the rise of book clubs in the last 10, 15, 20 years really speaks to that need for women to meet regularly. And certainly if you've been in a book club, you know that the discussion often veers to what's taking place in the world around us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's just done in a less formal kind of way, I suppose, now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about the main character, this teen girl in Wednesday Club.
So Ivy, the protagonist, is the story. She's 16 years old. She is a city girl whose mother is Hollywood bound and dumps her to live with her grandparents on a small farm in South Dakota in 1963. And of course, the city girl feels like her life is completely over. She's stuck in the middle of nowhere, a place she doesn't want to be. And then to make things worse, somehow her grandmother talks her into being the secretary of her Wednesday Club. This Wednesday Club, this fictional Wednesday Club, is a group of 6 older farm women who meet monthly to report on current affairs and, perhaps share a little gossip.
Oh, lovely. So were you getting inspiration from the kind of things that you found in the notes from the meeting as to the subjects that they were talking about?
I absolutely did. And the book is structured around, it takes place over 13 months. And it is structured around, at the end of each month, there are minutes, fictional minutes for what happened at the Wednesday Club that month. And of course, in between are the multiple points of view, the intertwining stories of the women in the Wednesday Club. And they run the gamut from wacky Atola, who's desperate to find a husband, to Hattie, who's hiding a painful secret, to the youngest member, Tilly. She's an aspiring artist struggling to raise 3 children under the age of 4.
Wow.
And so there are diverse characters who span generations. And over time, it's these unlikely members of the Wednesday Club who help Ivy to find a sense of home and friendship in this, to her, foreign land.
Yeah, nice. And when is it set then?
It is set in 1963 and 1964. The reason that I chose those years is that it's sort of the very beginning of society changing at that time. The civil rights movement was starting to come into play. Women's liberation, working outside of the home, was starting to be more possible. And so I was really curious. The Vietnam War was about to happen. So I was curious about how would these rural women be processing what was happening in the country around them, and how would they be dealing with it? And then there were fun things like the Beatles appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show for the very first time. And, what did these farm women think about these shaggy-haired rock and rollers?
Oh, it's a great idea. Yes, really, really perfect time in history for so many reasons, isn't it?
I think so. To write about that time period, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, if people want to get a copy of Wednesday Club, it's available now on our website, tre.radio, and it's by Christine Jensen, who we've been chatting with. Christine, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Nice talking with you.
TRE, your voice in Spain.
We have fun on a Thursday afternoon.
If you make your legs shorter, your hands are going to...
You can hear thoughtful comments and reflections.
I love when I see people who are heavier than me and wearing shorts or skirts and stuff, and I think good on you. I wish I'd had the confidence to do that.
But above all, you'll have a proper good laugh. Join me, Hannah Murray, and my guests on Men and Women Talk, Thursdays from 5 p.m. here on Talk Radio Europe.
Yeah, people go on holiday and sometimes, completely lose their inhibitions, and when it comes to alcohol and sex.
I've not been on any of those.
TRE Talk Radio Europe.
The Book Show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
You're listening to The Book Show with Hannah Murray on TRE.
Joining us on the line now is Evie Wood. She's the author of The Lost Bookshop, the #1 Wall Street Journal and Amazon Kindle bestseller, which has now sold over 1 million copies. She's with us on The Book Show to talk about her latest novel, The Violin Maker's Secret. Welcome to The Book Show, Evie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you with us. And I'm really excited to hear about both of those books, actually. I know you've written more than that, but the huge success of The Lost Bookshop must have been so exciting.
Yes, that was completely unexpected and amazing. And it was such a lovely journey to watch it kind of go, like it was really word of mouth, how it spread. And it just hit #1 on Amazon, and it just kind of took off from there. And it was really
very exciting.
Yeah. And what do you think, probably a difficult question to answer, but what do you think people enjoyed about it so much? What were the reviews saying?
Well, I think people just love books about books. I didn't really know that. Like, if I had known that, I might have written that book sooner. But I didn't really realize that there was such kind of an instant fan base there. But having said that, I think there was more to it than that. Like, I don't think I could ever really recreate what was in that book. I think it was the characters, the historical timeline connected with the contemporary timeline, I think, and the magical realism all kind of brought it together.
Yeah. So tell us about this new one, The Violin Maker's Secret, because it kind of stems from the lost and found at Heathrow Airport.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, when it's time to like do interviews and stuff for your books, and I was thinking, God, I always seem to be writing things about lost things. So I've really gone for like the lost and found now. But The Violin Maker's Secret, it's basically about a violin that changes the fate of the people who possess it. But is it a priceless Stradivarius or is it a worthless antique? And that's what our characters have to find out. So it's an adventure that kind of goes across time and across Europe and Canada and all over the place.
Oh,
so it's a bit of a caper.
Yeah. So tell us about your main characters who come across this violin.
Devlin, Gabrielle and Walter are the main characters, and Devlin just buys it as a present for his then girlfriend, but he realizes as soon as he picks it up that there's something kind of unique about this violin. Things start to change within him, and everything is going fine until he reads a newspaper article about a stolen violin taken from Christie's, and that's when he starts to get worried, and he contacts his old history teacher, Walter, and he is going through his own issues at the time, but he agrees to help him out. And then he takes him to Wilding's Violins, and that's where they meet Gabrielle. She's a violin appraiser, and she's very much a loner. And what happens when the three characters come together, they go on this journey together, but they actually learn a lot about each other through their friendship and grow through that.
Oh, great. So do we also learn a bit about the three of them and their backgrounds and things?
Yes, very much so. It's very much, even though, there is a strong plot there, but it's very much character driven. And I like to explore that in my novels, how meeting different people can really be the catalyst for change in your own life. So I really want my readers to connect with the characters and see themselves in the characters.
And what was your initial kind of idea? Was it all about this violin and the possible magical qualities it possesses, or was it the characters?
That's a good question. I think it probably started with the violin, to be fair. Yeah, I think I do begin with a plot, and then I decide who are the kind of people that I want to populate this plot and to move this story along. So I don't really meet the characters myself until after I'm kind of happy with a rough sketch of what the plot's going to be. Okay.
So you decide kind of what's going to happen in the story before you've got the characters, do you?
Very basically, a rough idea. Then I just want to start writing, because I think if you spend too much time thinking about it, you might never write it. So you just kind of have to get in there and start working.
And are you quite disciplined with your writing? Do you have set hours that you like to write?
No. That's the short answer to that. No, I'm not. I don't have set hours. It kind of varies with each novel, but yeah, I wouldn't say I have a routine or anything. But I tend to write sort of mid-morning, early afternoon. I never really write in the evenings, but that'd be the most of the routine that I have. But it's just having to stick with turning up at the page whenever that is, and just sticking at it. Yeah.
And do you try and write something every day, or just as and when you have time?
Yeah, I remember reading that, before I became a writer, and I thought, oh boy, that's going to be hard. But no, you don't need to write every day. I write when I feel like, well, no, that's not true. It's not like I write when I'm inspired. I write when there's work to do.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I have to show up every day and write a certain amount. No.
And once you've set aside that time for write, can you just concentrate on writing, or do you sometimes get distracted?
Yeah, I sometimes get distracted.
Yeah, you're human.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy to get distracted. And, sometimes I try to factor that in. And I think, well, if I'm getting distracted, especially by looking stuff up online or whatever, I'm like, well, I'm still at the computer. I haven't left the room. There's a better chance of me coming back. So I think maybe to go a bit easier on yourself and let your mind wander, rather than being really strict. That's how I do it anyway.
Yeah. And do you have a kind of book or collection of ideas for future novels? Do you have ideas in the middle of the night, or when you set down for each new book, do you go, right, what am I going to write about now? Where does it all come from?
Yeah, I have a couple. I didn't used to do that. I used to just put all of my energy into the book that I'm working on and then think, well, this is obviously going to be the last book because I don't have any more ideas. And it's so funny. Yeah, that's the way I think. I'd be like, oh, I have no idea what I'm going to write next. But in the last couple of years, I have, well, obviously since I've become published and I'm a professional writer now, I'm thinking, okay, these books have a better chance of getting published, because when I was self-published, I never even really knew if people were going to read these books. So I was very focused on the present, but now I have more of an eye to the future, because I know that my books will more than likely get in front of readers, and that's a real privileged position to be in. So yeah, my mind is kind of thinking ahead of, what would be nice to write about next.
Yeah, nice. And how did that happen for you, going from being self-published to getting a proper publisher?
It was a very long and winding road. I just kept submitting, basically. Kept writing, kept submitting, kept taking on the rejections, and not letting that mean that, I was a failure or that my writing was a failure. And I think that's the best advice that I could give to anybody, is just keep submitting, keep going, because you will get there eventually.
So were you submitting to agents? Is that what you mean, getting an agent and then the publisher came from there, or you submitting to publishers?
I was submitting to agents and I was submitting to open submissions. That's how I got my book deal with One More Chapter. They're an imprint of HarperCollins, and they had an open submission. Wow. And that's how I got in. So I don't have an agent.
Amazing. Because that doesn't happen all the time. So open submissions, is that just something that they do every so often?
Yeah, you just kind of have to keep an eye. They'll have a window, maybe a few weeks or something.
Right.
I knew that they had open submissions every now and again, so I just kept an eye. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, if people want to get a copy of The Violin Maker's Secret, it's out now. It's available on our website, tre.radio, in the bookshop section there. And it's by Evie Woods, who we've been chatting with. Evie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it.
You are listening to Hannah Murray on The Book Show.
Joining us on the line now is Holly B. Gutwillinger. She's an author and podcaster from a small northern Ontario town. Her debut novel, North of Broken and Forever Home, is out now. It explores a woman's complex relationship with her rescue dogs. Holly's writing is shaped by her deep love of family. She's the proud mother of 2 adult sons and her commitment to the animals who enrich our lives. Welcome to the Book Show, Holly.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here on this wintry day.
Oh, it's lovely to have you with us. And congratulations on your debut novel.
Thank you so much. It's a bit surreal at the moment.
So tell us about the subject matter in the book and why you wanted to write about that.
Well, it came to me on a day where I was really questioning what I was doing with my 2 rescue dogs. And they're around 12 years old now, and we've always been trying to fix them somehow or to help them with their issues, and never knowing what their history was, to trying to assess that on an ongoing basis. And one day, a few years ago, my one dog, Sully, who has the most issues of the 2, and by that I mean he's fearful, scared of everything, doorways, cars, people, everything. We were sitting in the backyard, and one day he started to just bounce over towards me, and his ears were flopping, and there was a window, like a moment where I saw true happiness in his face. And he was bouncing over towards me, and then this little poem sort of downloaded to me, and it was him trying to tell me, like, I'm okay, Everything is fine. You worry too much. Just accept me. And I say to people, it's not like woo-woo or my dog was actually talking to me, but I don't know. It was just my way of trying to understand him. And that opened up this door to more little stanzas downloading when I'd go for a run or we'd go for a walk. And that basically evolved into maybe I should write some of these feelings I'm having out, you know, and I've never really been much of a journaler to work out feelings and emotions. But when it came to the dogs, I was at a loss as to what more I could do for them because it had been over 10 years. And that just blossomed into literally words spilling out from, you know, I started studying craft of writing and taking classes and joining groups. And it evolved from that small poem in my mind, in my heart, to this 70-some thousand word book.
Oh,
that's
lovely.
basically the life of the book.
Yeah. So do you feel like you have a better relationship and understanding of your dogs through writing the book?
Definitely. I mean, what a gift. I feel like Sully gave me a gift in this book, and also, you know, giving us the opportunity to renew our relationship into something that's more mutual and understanding and accepting. That's the big word for me. And it's no longer a rescue story. You know, we always see those bumper stickers, who rescued who. And yes, I mean, there's some truth to that. But with this particular experience, it's been about acceptance. And I have accepted my dogs for who they are. Doesn't mean they don't still have their issues and we don't have moments, but because they accepted me the way I was and who I am now.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously you wanting to help them was obviously coming from a place of love. You know, you wanted them to not be scared of things, and which makes total sense. But lovely that you sort of had that kind of interaction from him saying that he's fine and you can relax a bit. It's really special.
Well, it is. And now every morning we have like a cuddle, like a special cuddle, whereas he never used to do that before. But I think my energy has shifted quite a bit, comes to him, and always trying to get a reaction out of him, like find something in him that is telling me he's okay. But now that I've accepted that, he allows me to come in for a snuggle, and it's like, I don't know, I'm his true mama, and he lets me sort of snuggle him, but he lets me know when enough is enough. And he backs away, and I respect that. And then we go our separate ways for the day. Whereas my other dog, well, he's like a 65-pound lap dog, and he'll take snuggles at any point.
It is interesting, isn't it? And they really do pick up on feelings. I've had experience with a cat, actually, where I was told that, you know, be careful of this cat because it'll bite you and it'll really go for you, and you need to be really careful and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, what? No, it's fine. And I was really relaxed around the cat, and the cat never bit me and never went for me. And it was the realization that the person that used to say, oh, the cat always bites, was afraid of being bitten and was constantly thinking, don't bite, he looks like he's going to bite me, he's looking like he's going to, and kind of putting out that energy. Whereas if you're putting out a relaxed energy around your pets, they're more relaxed to be around you.
It's true. And I think there's a moment, and, you know, there's time for play, there's time for relaxation, and they are always assessing you in their own way. So, and they're trying to adapt to what you're feeling in the moment. So I agree with you.
And there's definite patterns and signs that you can see. You mentioned the dog's ears, you know, how they have their ears, had their tail, their eyes. There's lots of kind of signs that you can see that they want to be left alone, or that they're really happy, or that they're a bit nervous. And it's really important that we understand and respect those signs.
I agree with you. And I think that perhaps most people don't take the time to recognize those signs. And maybe it's just because there's not an understanding. And that might go back to, let's say, a shelter or a breeder, where it would be great to maybe spend some time with a new dog owner, for someone who's never had a dog before, or a cat, to understand some of those signs.
Yeah, really
to
important.
Learn how to adjust. Yeah.
So tell me about the characters in your book.
Well, the protagonist's name is Renly, and she is a 47-year-old woman who is, she's trying to figure out where she fits in the family life, in her work life, friend circle, all of that. And her sons are off to post-secondary school. Yes, there are some similarities to my life, but it's because this started out as my story, but then I had to develop a completely separate character. And so she's married, and she doesn't care for her mother, but her mother, it's a very strained relationship. So she's trying to find herself. And so she joins her best friend's shelter as a volunteer, trying to find purpose, but she's not happy at work. And so she kind of goes through the motions, and they go on to this rescue mission up north for a day. And that's when she falls in love with Sully. So the two dogs in the book are actually my dogs. And the stories that are told have actually happened, but everything with Renly is now on a fiction basis. I recreated her.
And was it fun to recreate her, but also keep your dogs very real in the book?
Yes, because I had more liberties with her, and I had to give her different traits than mine, although there are some similarities. She's now someone that I might like to be friends with.
That's nice.
Yeah, but I can completely relate to her, and I think readers will relate to her as well, because she's a woman with an average life and trying to do the best that she can. And the stories of the dogs, well, that is true as well. Now, I will say that Sully has a voice in the book. So there is her point of view, and then there's Sully's point of view. So I am asking readers to set aside judgment for a little bit and just, have some fun when Sully is talking.
And what does the title mean? North of Broken and Forever Home.
It did have a completely different title in the beginning, but I just didn't feel like it was doing the book justice. And with adding Cash in the book, it wasn't solely about Sully anymore. So, and the previous title had Sully in it. So North of Broken and Forever Home. To me, when I initially got Sully, I remember the shelter attendant saying to me, "Oh, Sully is so broken that he'll be fine for Cash because Cash is so high energy that he'll never react. That's how broken he is." And that has always stayed with me. And so I thought, well, I think in this process, we're all a little bit further away from being broken, because we're all a little broken to a certain extent, right? Humans, animals. And so being north of broken, we're just a little bit further away from that. And that Sully and Cash are forever home. And so the spin with the fur, of course, on Forever Home.
Yeah, nice. Well, if people want to get a copy of North of Broken and Forever Home, it's out now. It's available on our website, tre.radio, in the bookshop section. And it's by Holly B. Gutwillinger, who we've been chatting with today. Holly, thank you so much for joining us.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. And who doesn't love speaking about their dogs? So thank you for that as well.
Oh, my pleasure.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
The Book Show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.